was the night before Thanksgiving, 1998, and the rain hadn't stopped since dusk. The sky was the color of slate, the kind of low, unbroken gray that seemed to swallow every bit of light. I was somewhere between Terre Haute and Bloomington, driving my old 91 Land Rover Defender alone, with the heater whining and the wipers struggling to keep up with the sheets of water smearing across the windshield. I was supposed to be at my sister's place by 10. She lived just outside of Columbus. Every year, I'd make the trip down from Chicago, always thinking I could beat the weather, and every year, I'd get stuck behind a storm front. But this one was different. The rain had that late November chill to it, a bone-deep wetness that made the world feel empty. The highway, State Road 46, I think, was deserted. The only light came from my high beams cutting through the mist and the dim glow of my dash clock creeping toward 11:17. No gas stations, no towns for miles, just black fields, the faint silhouettes of trees, and the occasional glint of waterlogged fence posts sliding by. Then it happened. The engine coughed once, twice, then went silent. Every gauge needle fell to zero. The headlights dimmed, flickered, and died, leaving me in instant darkness. I coasted to the shoulder, heart thudding, the only sound the rain hammering against the roof. I tried the ignition. Click. Again. Click. Nothing. The wind outside shifted, carrying the low groan of distant thunder. I sat there for a moment, listening to the slow tick of cooling metal under the rain. The heater had died with the engine, and the cold came creeping in fast. I reached for my phone, an old Nokia brick that had served me faithfully for years. No bars. Of course not. I held it up to the windshield, squinting through the streaks of water. But it was useless. I was in dead country. Great, I muttered, breath fogging the glass. I popped the hood release and stepped out into the storm. The rain hit like a slap. Within seconds, my jacket was soaked through. I lifted the hood, holding it up with one hand, while the other groped blindly over the greasy mass of machinery. I knew a little about engines, but not enough to fix one by feel in the dark. The smell of wet oil and mud filled the air. Somewhere nearby, water gurgled through a ditch, swollen from the downpour. A pair of headlights crested the distant hill behind me. The first I'd seen in half an hour. Stepped back, waving an arm. The lights slowed, growing larger, then swerved into the opposite lane and roared past, splashing a wave of dirty water over my legs. I dropped the hood, climbed back inside, and sat there, shivering. The silence was unbearable. Just the patter of rain, the groan of wind, and my own breathing. After maybe 20 minutes, I spotted faint lights again, this time from the opposite direction. They were steady, deliberate. I tensed, unsure whether to flag them down or not. They drew closer, a pickup truck, maybe late 70s, two-tone paint job under the grime. Its headlights glared through the rain. It slowed as it approached, engine rumbling like an animal. Then it stopped a few yards ahead of me. The driver's door opened with a squeal I could hear even over the weather. A man stepped out, tall and broad-shouldered, wearing a yellow rain slicker that glistened under the lights. He walked toward me, one hand up in greeting. "You all right there, buddy?" he called out, voice muffled by the rain. I opened my door a crack, broke down, won't start. He came closer, squinting through the downpour. His face was rough, pitted from old acne scars with a week's worth of gray stubble. He had that farmer's look, someone used to being out in weather like this. "Damn shame," he said, glancing at my Land Rover. "These things don't like the cold. Got a phone?" No service. He nodded. Ain't surprised. You're between towers out here. Closest town's Ash Hollow, about 10 miles back the way I came. I hesitated. Ash Hollow. Tiny place. Got a diner, couple of motels. I can give you a lift if you want. The way he said it sounded casual enough. Friendly, even. But there was something about the way he stood there, rain dripping off his hood, that made me uneasy. Maybe it was just the hour, or the emptiness of the road. I forced a smile. That'd be great. Appreciate it. He nodded, motioned toward his truck. Come on then. Inside, the cab smelled faintly of gasoline and cigarettes. The heat was blasting, fogging the windshield. An old CB radio crackled between the seats. A rifle rack was mounted behind the headrests. Empty, but clean. Name's Roy, he said, glancing at me as we pulled onto the road. Mark. He nodded. You from around here? Chicago, just passing through. Long way from home. Yeah. He didn't say much after that. The windshield wipers squeaked rhythmically, the radio hissing with static. Every now and then, lightning flared across the horizon, followed by the distant roll of thunder. The road curved through farmland and stretches of forest, the headlights catching only flashes of wet bark and fence wire. After about 10 minutes, I started noticing the signs, literal ones. The green highway markers were rusted and bullet-riddled. One had been knocked halfway over, reading Ash Hollow, 6 miles. Quiet town? I asked. Roy chuckled. Quiet's one word for it. Folks keep to themselves. The tone of his voice made my stomach tighten. He said it with a kind of dry amusement, like there was more he wasn't telling me. When we passed a weather-beaten farmhouse on a hill, its porch light flickering in the rain, I thought about asking him to let me out there, to knock on a door, call a tow. But we were moving fast, and I didn't want to look paranoid. You said you were headed where? He asked suddenly. Columbus, my sister's place. Family for the holiday. He smiled faintly. That's nice. The way he said that's nice wasn't quite right. It came out slow, deliberate, as if he were tasting the words. We fell into silence again. The road narrowed, hemmed in by trees. The rain eased to a drizzle, though the mist thickened, hanging low across the asphalt. Almost there, Roy said. Ash Hollow's just past this bend. Sure enough, a minute later, we rolled into what barely qualified as a town. A gas station, a dark grocery store, a diner with its open sign flickering half dead. A single traffic light blinked yellow over the intersection. Roy slowed in front of the diner. You can call a tow from here. They'll send someone out from Brown County, probably. Thanks, man, I appreciate it. No trouble. He shifted the truck into park. You sure you're good here, though? Ain't much open after midnight. I checked my watch, 12:02 a.m. I'll figure it out, I said. He nodded, watching me for a second too long before adding, Happy Thanksgiving, Mark. Then he pulled away, tires hissing on wet pavement. The diner's neon sign buzzed above the door, reflecting red and white on the puddles. I stepped inside to the sound of a bell and the smell of burnt coffee. The place was nearly empty, just a waitress behind the counter and a man sitting alone at the end booth, face hidden behind a newspaper. A small TV above the register flickered with muted weather reports. Kitchen's closed, the waitress said, without looking up. She was in her 50s, with tired eyes and a smoker's rasp. Coffee's all we got. That's fine, I said, sliding onto a stool. Truck broke down up the road. You got a phone I can use? She nodded toward the wall by the bathrooms. Payphone still works, sometimes. I dug out some change, walked over, and lifted the receiver deadline. I tried again. Nothing. It's out? She asked. Yeah. Storm must have knocked it. You'll have to wait till morning if you want a tow. I sighed, rubbing my hands together for warmth. Any motels nearby? She gestured vaguely toward the window. Hollowview Inn, other side of the highway, couple blocks down. The man in the booth lowered his paper then, and I caught him watching me. His eyes were small, set deep under a heavy brow, and he wore a denim jacket stained dark at the collar. When he saw me looking, he smiled slightly, just a thin curl of his lips, then raised the paper again. Something about it unsettled me. I thanked the waitress and stepped back outside. The rain had stopped, but the fog was thicker than ever, curling around the streetlights. The town was silent, save for the low hum of a power line. The Hollowview Inn was easy enough to find, a 2-story building with peeling white paint and a sagging porch. Only one window upstairs was lit. I crossed the empty street, boots squelching in puddles, and stepped inside. The lobby smelled of mildew and old carpet. A bell sat on the counter beside a guest book. I rang it once. A moment later, a door opened behind the desk, and a man emerged. He was thin, maybe 60, with stringy gray hair and wire-rimmed glasses. Need a room? He asked. Just for the night. Storm get you stuck? Yeah. Land Rover died out on 46. He nodded knowingly, slid a key across the counter. Room 7, $30. You can pay in the morning. I thanked him, signed the book, and climbed the narrow stairs. Room 7 was small, just a bed, a dresser, and a bathroom with a flickering light. The sheets were clean enough, though the wallpaper was peeling near the corners. I sat on the bed, listening to the faint rumble of thunder drifting farther away. My nerves were finally starting to settle. I was safe, at least for the night. But as I took off my wet jacket, I noticed something odd. The sleeve was streaked with brownish-red smears. At first, I thought it was mud, but when I lifted it closer to the lamp, the color was unmistakable. Blood. Not mine. I froze, heart thudding. I replayed the night in my head, the breakdown, the rain, Roy offering me a ride. I hadn't noticed any blood then. It couldn't have come from the Land Rover. It had died clean, which meant it came from somewhere else, somewhere inside that truck. I've driven that same stretch of road every Thanksgiving since I was old enough to drive. Route 14, west out of Harrisburg, past the barren cornfields and rust-colored trees, all the way to my grandparents' house near Duncannon. It's a quiet route in late November, a lonely one too, especially when the daylight dies early and the fog crawls off the Susquehanna like smoke. But the year my father died, I took a detour. He'd been gone just over 6 months by then. A workplace accident at the mill where he'd worked for 30 years. One of the cranes gave out, they said. Instant. I wasn't there, thank God. My mother never told me much more, and I didn't ask. There's a kind of silence families keep around those sudden deaths, like speaking it out loud might make it happen all over again. Thanksgiving had been his favorite holiday. He'd always rise before dawn, making the turkey brine and telling jokes over the smell of coffee. He'd carve the bird like it was a performance, a little too theatrical, always drawing laughs from the rest of us. My mother used to roll her eyes, but I think she loved it. That first Thanksgiving without him felt wrong from the start. The radio on the drive over played nothing but static, and the sky hung low and heavy. I don't remember deciding to stop at the cemetery. I just found myself signaling right when I saw the turnoff for Mount Olive. The cemetery sits up on a hill behind a stand of pines. It's not big, maybe 100 graves at most, and most of the stones lean forward a little, as if the earth's been slowly exhaling for decades. My father's grave was near the back, close to the tree line. I parked by the gate, left the engine idling for warmth, and grabbed the small bouquet I'd picked up on the way. I didn't plan to stay long. The air had that sharp, metallic chill that cuts through every layer of clothing. The leaves around the graves were wet and matted, making a soft, sucking sound under my boots. When I reached his headstone, Thomas E. Carlyle, 1958 to 2002, I realized how strange it felt to see my name, too, carved in smaller letters beneath his beloved father of Thomas Jr. I stood there a long while, not saying much, just breathing, watching the steam of my breath drift away. Eventually I spoke. "Hey, Dad." The words came out awkward, boyish. I'm headed to Grandma's. Everyone's already there. I just wanted to stop by first. It doesn't feel right, you not being there this year." I laughed once, a quick, unsteady sound. "Mom still can't cook a turkey. I think she's just going to order fried chicken." The wind moved through the trees then, a low, steady rustle. But there wasn't much wind in the valley. The sound felt directed somehow, like someone was answering from just behind me. I didn't turn around. I remember looking at the little picture inset on the headstone, that small oval photo we'd picked for him. He was wearing his work uniform, smiling like he always did after a long shift. On his wrist, even in that photo, was the old gold watch. He'd had that thing for as long as I could remember. A Seiko, nothing fancy, but solid and heavy. I used to borrow it in high school when I had to dress up. He'd joke that I looked more like a man when I wore it. He'd promised me, more than once, that it'd be mine someday. But after the accident, the watch was gone. He'd been wearing it that day, and it was never recovered. The coroner told us it must have been destroyed or lost at the site. Still, I found myself staring at the picture, at the glint of that watch on his wrist, and whispering, "You still owe me that, old man." And then, I swear this is true, the air changed. It was subtle at first. The cold deepened, but not the way it normally does. It felt like the temperature was falling from inside me, as if my bones were icing over. My breath came out in a thin white ribbon that didn't drift away. It just hung there, frozen. The rustling of the trees stopped. No birds, no distant highway hum, no sound at all. And yet, somehow, I wasn't scared. Not right then. I felt a warmth too, but it wasn't physical, more like presence. A nearness I can't explain, like someone standing inches behind me, about to rest their hand on my shoulder. "Dad," I said. Quiet. No voice answered. No ghost appeared. But I felt him. I knew he was there. The silence stretched on until I realized I'd been holding my breath. I exhaled, stepped back from the headstone, and said, "It's okay. I just wanted to see you. I miss you." The warmth faded as quickly as it had come, and the wind started again. A crow called somewhere down the hill. The world came back to life. I don't remember walking back to the car. One second I was at his grave, and the next I was behind the wheel, rubbing my hands together for warmth. I reached for the ignition, and that's when I saw it. Sitting dead center on the dashboard, glinting faintly in the gray afternoon light, was my father's watch. The same scuffed gold face, the same cracked leather strap, the second hand still ticking, slow and steady, as if it had never stopped. I stared at it for a long time. afraid to touch it. My first thought, the stupid, rational one, was that someone had found it, tracked me down, placed it there. But there was no one around. The gate was still shut, the cemetery empty. Finally, I picked it up. The leather was warm against my fingers, not sun-warmed, but body-warm. I whispered, "Thank you." The second hand ticked once, as if in reply. I wore that watch to Thanksgiving dinner that year. I still have it, right here beside me as I tell this story. The day I stopped at his grave, it kept perfect time. And every Thanksgiving since, without fail, it starts ticking again. I stared at the dark smear on my sleeve until my stomach began to turn. It wasn't just a speck. It was a thick streak, almost like something had been dragged across me. The more I looked, the clearer it became. Rusty brown where it had dried, darker near the edge where it had soaked deeper. Not fresh, but not old either. Rainwater couldn't have done that. I set the jacket down carefully on the nightstand and sat there for a while, heart thudding in my throat. The hum of the old motel's neon sign bled through the thin walls, a steady electric buzz. I tried to convince myself there was a logical reason. Maybe Roy had been hunting earlier in the evening. Maybe it was animal blood. But then I remembered the empty gun rack behind his seat. Clean. No mud. No stains. The way he'd looked at me before pulling away. The way he'd said, "Happy Thanksgiving." I tried not to imagine what else could have been in that truck. I got up, crossed to the window, and pulled the curtain aside. The fog was still heavy, diffusing the glow of the lone street light out front. The diner sign across the road had gone dark. Nothing moved except the slow drift of mist. Then, faintly, I saw it. A pair of headlights creeping into town from the east. My pulse quickened. The truck. It rolled slowly down the empty street, lights cutting through the haze. It passed the diner, then coasted to a stop just across from the motel. The driver's side door opened. Roy stepped out. Even through the fog, I knew it was him. Same slicker, same heavy shoulders. He stood there for a moment, scanning the row of buildings. His face was in shadow, but his head moved deliberately, searching for me. I let the curtain fall shut and backed away from the window. The lobby light flickered faintly beneath my door. I listened hard, but the only sound was the distant hum of the truck's idling engine. I needed to think leaving through the front would put me right in his line of sight. The back might open onto the alley behind the motel. If there was an alley, I shoved my damp boots back on and eased open the door. The hallway was empty. The air smelled faintly of cleaning chemicals and old smoke. I moved as quietly as I could, stepping down the creaking stairs, skipping every third one that groaned. The clerk was gone. The desk lamp was still on, but the office door behind it hung open into darkness. I pushed through the side door leading to the back. It opened into a narrow gravel strip lined with trash bins and overgrown weeds. A single floodlight buzzed above, throwing long, spidery shadows. I moved quickly along the wall, crouching low. My breath made soft clouds in the cold. When I reached the corner, I risked a glance toward the street. Roy's truck was still parked there, engine running, headlights pointed at the motel's front office. The driver's door was open now, no sign of him. Then came the sound, a faint, wet crunch of boots on gravel. Close. I turned just in time to see him rounding the corner from the opposite side, maybe 20 feet away. He stopped when he saw me. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then he smiled, slow and deliberate, like he'd expected this all along. "Evening, Mark." My mouth went dry. "What do you want?" He took a few steps closer, rain dripping from his hood. "You left your jacket." I glanced down. His hand hung at his side. Something glinted there, metal, dull in the floodlight. A knife. Every instinct screamed to run. I bolted down the gravel strip, cutting toward the end of the building. Behind me, I heard his boots pounding the wet ground. I hit the corner, sprinted around it, and slipped on the slick pavement, catching myself against the siding. My breath came in sharp gasps. I ducked behind a dumpster and forced myself to listen. His footsteps slowed. Crunch, crunch, then stopped. "I told you Ash Hollow was quiet," he said softly. His voice echoed slightly off the buildings. "Ain't nobody gonna hear you out here." I pressed myself against the cold metal, heart hammering so hard I thought it might give me away. Then, silence. I waited. 5 seconds. 10. A full minute. Nothing. He was gone. Or waiting. I peeked around the edge. The alley was empty. The fog seemed thicker now, muting every sound. I crept forward, moving toward the back road that led out of town. There was a faint orange glow in the distance. Maybe the diner's backlot, maybe another streetlight. If I could get there, maybe I could find another car, a phone, anything. When I reached the edge of the alley, I saw the faint outlines of parked vehicles, a few old sedans, a van. The diner's kitchen light still glowed dimly behind its curtains. I stepped out, keeping low, and started across the lot. Then something slammed into me from behind. The force knocked me face first into the mud. My head rang. Hands gripped my shoulders, heavy and calloused. "Didn't your mama ever tell you not to run from folks trying to help you?" I twisted, grabbing at his wrist. The knife glinted again in the rain. I kicked upward, catching him in the knee. He grunted, stumbled. I rolled free, mud splattering my face, and scrambled toward the van. He came after me fast, breathing hard, muttering something under his breath. I yanked on the van door, locked. He lunged. The blade sliced through my sleeve, close enough that I felt the wind of it. I threw my shoulder into him, and we both went down. The knife skidded across the pavement. I didn't think. I just grabbed the nearest thing I could, a loose brick from the edge of the lot, and swung. The sound was thick, dull. He went limp, collapsing into the mud. For a second, I just stood there, chest heaving, rain washing the blood from my hands. My whole body shook with adrenaline. Then I saw his hand twitch. I didn't wait to see if he'd get back up. I ran down the street, past the diner, through the fog, toward the dark horizon where the highway began. The town disappeared behind me. The rain started again, harder now, soaking through my clothes. I had no idea where I was going, just away. After maybe half a mile, I saw a flicker of light ahead. Headlights, moving fast. I waved my arms like a madman, shouting, staggering into the middle of the road. The car slowed, honked once, and pulled to the shoulder. The window rolled down, revealing a woman in her 30s, blonde hair pulled back under a ball cap. "You all right?" she asked. "Please," I gasped. "I need help. There's a man back there. He tried to kill me." Her expression hardened instantly. "Get in." I climbed into the passenger seat, still trembling. The heater was on, blasting warm air. The inside smelled faintly of coffee and diesel. She hit the gas. "Where?" "The motel in Ash Hollow. He's got a knife. He followed me from the highway." She nodded once, eyes fixed on the road. "Name's Sarah. I'm headed to Brown County. Sheriff's office is on the way. We'll get you safe." I couldn't speak for a moment, just nodded. She drove fast, windshield wipers beating a steady rhythm. The fog thinned as we climbed a small hill. I looked back. No headlights followed. "You from around here?" I asked finally, voice shaky. "Used to be," she said. "Family farm out near the river. Not much left now. Folks leave. The ones who stay. Well," she glanced at me briefly, "you picked a bad night to break down." I gave a hollow laugh. "You're telling me." We rode in silence for a few minutes. My heartbeat was starting to slow. I kept waiting to hear sirens, to see the lights of civilization ahead. Then I noticed the dashboard clock. It read 12:57 a.m. We'd been driving for over 20 minutes. The town should have been long behind us. The highway signs should have started by now. But there were none. Just more road, winding through endless black trees. "You said the sheriff's office was on the way?" She didn't answer at first. Then, "Yeah, should be." But her tone was off, too casual. My gut turned cold. I looked down. Her hands were gripping the steering wheel hard enough that her knuckles had gone white. And then I saw it on the sleeve of her jacket. Faint smears of dried brown. Blood. My throat closed. She must have seen me looking, because she smiled. That same slow, deliberate smile I'd seen on Roy. "You're a tough one, Mark," she said quietly. My hand went for the door handle, but she hit the locks with a click that echoed through the cab. "Now don't be stupid," she said. "Roy gets a little overexcited sometimes. He was supposed to wait, but we can still make this right." I stared at her, too shocked to speak. "Who the hell are you?" I whispered. She kept her eyes on the road. "Just locals, taking care of what's ours." I lunged for the wheel, but she elbowed me hard in the ribs, sending a jolt of pain through my side. The car swerved, tires screeching. I grabbed the door handle again, yanked it with everything I had. It flew open, cold air slamming into my face. I threw myself out, hitting the wet gravel shoulder hard. Pain shot up my arm. The world spun. Behind me, the car skidded to a stop. Headlights flared through the mist. I crawled into the ditch, dragging myself through weeds and mud. My vision swam. Her door slammed. Footsteps splashed closer. "Mark," she called, "you're making this worse for yourself." I stayed low, inching forward through the muck until I reached the trees. The forest swallowed me whole, black trunks, dripping leaves, and the smell of wet earth. I didn't stop moving. Branches clawed at my clothes. My breath came in ragged bursts. Behind me, a flashlight beam danced through the fog. Her voice drifted after it, calm and taunting. "You won't get far. We know these woods." I kept going, deeper, until the light finally faded. When I couldn't hear her anymore, I collapsed against a fallen log, shivering uncontrollably. My arm throbbed, ribs aching. I had no idea where I was. Just somewhere outside that cursed little town. I stayed there until dawn. When the gray light finally broke through the trees, I staggered out toward the sound of a road. A passing trucker found me, walking barefoot along the shoulder of Route 135 around 7 in the morning. He called the sheriff. When the deputies went back to Ash Hollow, they found nothing. The diner was empty. The motel too. No guests, no clerk. Just rooms stripped bare, as if nobody had stayed there in years. And no record of anyone named Roy or Sarah in the county. The Land Rover was gone. They said maybe I'd gotten turned around, wandered into an abandoned stretch of town hit by flood damage years ago. Maybe I'd hallucinated parts of it. But I know what I saw, what I felt. I still have the scar on my arm where the knife sliced through my sleeve. And sometimes, when I'm driving late at night, I catch a flash of headlights in the rearview mirror, a two-tone pickup keeping pace just a little too long before fading into the dark. Every year since, I've taken the train to Thanksgiving, because there are worse things than breaking down alone on the road. It's the kind of people who stop to help that you have to watch out for.